Mike and Sarah grew up in the same neighborhood, their friendship blossoming under the canopy of childhood innocence. Mike was the son of a hardworking mechanic and a stay-at-home mom. His family struggled to make ends meet, but they were rich in love. On the other hand, Sarah was the daughter of a billionaire businessman, living in a sprawling mansion that cast a shadow over Mike's modest home. Despite their differences, the two were inseparable. Sarah loved Mike's simplicity and the way he treated her like a normal person, not the heir to a business empire. By the time they reached middle school, their friendship turned into a sweet, innocent romance. For a time, it felt like their bond could withstand anything. But as they grew older, the cracks began to show. Mike became painfully aware of the gap between their worlds. While Sarah's life was filled with luxury and endless opportunities, Mike's family barely had enough to pay for his school supplies. He began to feel like he wasn't good enough for her, that their relationship was doomed by their differences. One day, when they were both 16, Mike abruptly ended things. "You deserve someone who can give you the world," he said, his voice cracking. Before Sarah could protest, he walked away, leaving her heartbroken and confused. In the weeks that followed, Mike avoided her entirely, eventually ghosting her completely. He poured all his energy into his studies and part-time jobs, determined to build a life where he wouldn't feel so small. Years passed. Mike graduated college at the top of his class and was offered a position at Titan Corp, the largest company in the country. It was a dream job, one that promised to finally pull his family out of poverty. When he walked into the company's sleek glass headquarters on his first day, he was nervous but excited. As Mike sat through the orientation, the air in the room shifted. The double doors opened, and in walked the chairman of Titan Corp, a confident, poised young woman in a tailored suit. Mike's heart nearly stopped. It was Sarah. Her gaze swept over the room and landed on him. For a brief moment, her polished exterior faltered. Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by a storm of emotions, shock, hurt, and something else he couldn't quite place. But she quickly recovered, her voice steady as she addressed the room. "Welcome to Titan Corp. I'm Sarah Livingston, your chairman." Mike spent the rest of the day in a daze. Memories of their childhood flooded his mind, along with the pain of their parting. He couldn't decide if fate had brought them back together or if it was some cruel joke. When Mike joined Titan Corp, he was ready to work hard and prove himself. But his past with Sarah loomed over him like a shadow. Although she remained professional in meetings, outside of them, Sarah made it clear she hadn't forgiven him. At first, it was subtle, curt responses, avoiding his presence and glaring at him during meetings when no one else was watching. But as the weeks turned into months, Sarah's actions became harder to ignore. During one team meeting, Mike presented an innovative strategy that impressed the senior management. Just as he finished, Sarah, sitting at the head of the table, leaned back with an amused smirk. "Not bad," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Though I'd expect something more refined from a top graduate. Perhaps next time take a little more time to think it through." The room fell silent. Mike swallowed hard and nodded. "I'll improve it, ma'am." But the humiliation didn't stop there. Sarah began showing up to company events with high-profile suitors. At a charity gala, she arrived on the arm of a wealthy investor, laughing and leaning into him as cameras flashed. Mike, who was working behind the scenes to manage logistics, couldn't take his eyes off her. She noticed, of course, and gave him a fleeting, cold glance before turning her attention back to her date. The whispers among the employees grew louder. "Did you see how she shut him down in the meeting?" one would say. "I heard they have some history," another would murmur. Mike felt like a joke in his own workplace. One particularly painful moment came when Sarah invited the entire department to her mansion for a company retreat. Mike hadn't been to her home since they were kids, and the memories were overwhelming. As everyone mingled, Sarah introduced her date for the evening, a charming CEO from a rival firm. "Mike," she called out loudly in front of everyone, beckoning him over. "Meet Charles. He's running a company twice the size of ours. You should take notes, maybe one day you'll get there." Mike felt the sting of her words, but forced a polite smile. "Nice to meet you, Charles," he said, keeping his tone steady. Charles, oblivious to the tension, extended his hand. "Likewise. Sarah's told me a lot about this company's rising stars. Keep up the good work." The evening ended with Mike retreating to his tiny apartment, his chest heavy with guilt and pain. He had broken Sarah's heart years ago, but now it felt like she was determined to break his spirit. Weeks later, during a late-night brainstorming session, Mike stayed behind to finalize a critical presentation. He didn't realize Sarah was still in the office until she walked into the conference room, her heels clicking against the floor. "Why are you still here?" she asked, her voice devoid of the usual coldness. "I have to finish this for tomorrow," he replied without looking up. She lingered in the doorway, watching him. "You're working hard," she said softly, almost as if it was an unintentional slip. He finally looked up, exhaustion etched into his face. "What do you want from me, Sarah? To prove myself? To grovel? I know I hurt you, and I'd take it back if I could, but you're killing me here." Her expression hardened again. "You think this is just about what you did to me? You left me, Mike. You walked away without a word, like I didn't matter. Do you know how humiliating it was to be the girl waiting for someone who never came back? I was a kid, Sarah, he said, his voice cracking. I didn't know how to handle it. I thought I was saving you from a future with someone who wasn't good enough for you. And now, she asked, her voice trembling. Now I realize that decision wasn't mine to make. And I hate myself every day for it. For a moment, Sarah's mask slipped, and Mike saw the hurt beneath her anger. But she quickly composed herself. Good. Maybe you should. She turned and walked away, leaving him alone in the conference room. The next day, during the presentation Mike had worked so hard on, Sarah surprised everyone. After he finished, instead of the usual critique, she nodded approvingly. Impressive work, she said, her tone sincere. It was a small gesture, but for Mike, it felt like a crack in the wall she had built between them. Over time, Sarah's icy demeanor began to thaw. She still went on dates and kept her guard up, but there were moments when her vulnerability peeked through, a lingering glance, a softened tone, a rare smile. And as much as she tried to hurt Mike, she couldn't deny the ache in her own heart. Deep down, she wasn't just punishing him. She was punishing herself for still caring.